Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Andrew, and I was engaged to a woman I'll call Victoria. We were supposed to get married in October. The venue was booked, the invitations were ordered, and she had moved into my apartment months before this all went down. We'd been together for 2 years, engaged for 8 months. I thought I knew her, but I was wrong. What I discovered one night changed everything I thought I knew about trust, about love, and about the person I was sharing my bed with. The woman I was planning to spend my life with had been living a complete lie. And the worst part was she would come home from being with another man and act like nothing had happened. This wasn't a one-night mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a calculated deception that went on for months. And it all came crashing down because of a text message notification at 2:17 a.m. Victoria and I met at a friend's birthday party in 2022. She was funny, smart, and we had this instant connection. She worked as HR at a tech company, and I'm a project manager at a construction firm. We dated for about a year and a half before I proposed. I took her to the same restaurant where we had our first date and asked her there. She cried, said yes. I had a friend take photos of us while this was going on, and she posted them all over social media. Her friends were excited, and my family loved her. Everything seemed perfect. When we decided she'd move in with me in November, it made financial sense. We were getting married anyway, and her lease was up. She brought her furniture, her plants, her entire life into my apartment. We started sharing everything, including the whole domestic thing. I remember she once mentioned she had a childhood friend called Marcus. According to Victoria, they'd known each other since middle school, but had lost touch for years until they reconnected on Facebook a few months after we got engaged. He had seen the photos of our engagement online and had decided to reach out to her. After they reconnected, she'd mention him casually in our conversations. At first, I didn't think much of it. I have female friends I text with occasionally. Back then, I didn't see this as a red flag or anything. As we draw closer to the month of our wedding, she started having girls' nights out more frequently. She claimed she wanted to spend time with her single friends before she became officially married. They would pick Thursday nights, which I thought was weird timing, but she explained that her girlfriends preferred weeknights because weekends were too crowded at bars. I trusted her completely. We were engaged. We were planning a future together. Why would I doubt her? Looking back, there were other signs I missed after she moved in with me. But here's the thing about trust. When you really trust someone, you explain away all the weird behavior. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You tell yourself you're being paranoid or controlling if you question them. I was working extra hours in January and February, picking up overtime to pay for wedding expenses. Victoria was handling most of the wedding planning, which I was grateful for. I'd come home exhausted, and she'd have dinner ready or would order takeout. We'd watch TV, talk about our days, and make plans for the weekend. It all felt so normal. The irony is that during this time, when I thought we were closer than ever, she was living this entire secret life that I knew nothing about. One Thursday night, I didn't stay overtime at the workplace, and as soon as I came home, Victoria told me she was tired from finishing up work emails. I was relieved that she would be free to spend time with me tonight. We'd been like ships passing in the night lately with my overtime. We ordered Chinese food and ate it on the couch while watching a true crime documentary on Netflix. Victoria seemed a little distracted, checking her phone more than usual, but I figured it was work stuff. Around 10 p.m., she mentioned getting a headache and said she wanted to go to bed early. She took some Tylenol to help with the ache. I tried to stay up to finish the documentary, but I couldn't as I felt sleepy after she left. I got into the room and saw her completely out. She's always been a heavy sleeper, especially when she takes Tylenol. She was snoring softly, which she does when she sleeps on her back. But she had her phone in her hand, with its light still on. I stepped over to keep the phone on the nightstand, and it buzzed in my hand. I checked, and she was in the middle of a chat with Marcus before she passed out. The most recent message from him was asking if she was still awake. I know I should have just locked the phone and put it back. But something in my gut told me to scroll up and read more. I checked the previous messages they had and was shocked to my bones. These people, after reconnecting, have been meeting each other. This couldn't be what I thought it was. There had to be some explanation. I scrolled up more to find out that they were even making plans to meet up some other time, as she was too busy to see her that week. Victoria had agreed, but said they needed to be more careful because I had been asking more questions. I literally couldn't catch my breath. I looked over at Victoria, still sleeping peacefully, and felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. I kept scrolling. Days and days of messages. Victoria would tell me she was having dinner with her friend when I was working overtime, but I now saw she was being ravaged in a motel room. I read where she said Marcus felt so much better than I did. Messages about her getting wet just thinking about what he'd done to her the day before. The messages went back to December, a month after she'd moved in with me. And then I found a message that broke me completely. 3 weeks ago, they had met, as I could see from a chat. Victoria had told Marcus how she was cooking dinner for me, but could still feel the sensation inside of her. She couldn't believe she'd cooked dinner for me right after he'd come inside her. She'd written that she could still taste him in her mouth while she was kissing me goodnight. I read about their first time together, how she'd been curious about him since they reconnected. It was just supposed to be coffee, but ended up being 3 hours in a motel room. I read about how she compared us in bed, how she faked orgasms with me but had real ones with him. She was considering calling off the wedding, but didn't want to hurt me. By the time I finished reading, it was almost 3 a.m. I had screenshots of everything saved to my photos, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never seen any of it and go back to my ignorant happiness. But I couldn't unknow what I now knew. I couldn't unfeel the nausea when I thought about all the nights when she'd come home and kiss me hello. I couldn't stop picturing her in that motel room with him, then coming home to play house with me. The worst part wasn't just that she was cheating. It was the level of deception involved. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake or even an emotional affair that got physical. This was calculated, planned, and ongoing. I started connecting dates in the messages to specific memories. Every kind gesture, every romantic evening, every declaration of love had been tainted by what she'd done hours before. She would come home with another man's sweat still on her skin and cook for me. She would kiss me with a mouth that had been on his body. She would tell me she loved me while her underwear was probably still wet from being with him. The level of compartmentalization was what got to me the most. How do you spend hours with your lover, then come home and act like the devoted fiancé? How do you plan a wedding with one man while doing this with another? How do you look someone in the eye and say you love them when you've just told another man the same thing? I was awake until almost 4 a.m. I was shaking with rage and hurt, but couldn't do anything because I knew if I started that conversation at 4 a.m., it would be a screaming match. The neighbors would call the cops. It would be ugly. I also needed time to process what I'd learned, to decide what I wanted to say, what questions I needed to ask. Because once I confronted her, everything would change. Our relationship would be over. Our wedding would be canceled. Our life together would end. Even knowing what she'd done, even with all the evidence right there in black and white, part of me wasn't ready for that finality. I finally got back into bed next to her, and I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. She woke up around 7:30, same as always. Her alarm went off. She hit snooze once, then got up and went to the bathroom. She came back and kissed my forehead, told me good morning, and started getting ready for work. I watched her put on makeup, do her hair, get dressed in business attire. The same routine I'd watched hundreds of times. Except now I knew that she'd leave work early to meet her lover. She'd probably touch up her makeup in the car afterward, make sure she looked presentable before coming home to me. She asked if I was okay, noticing I was just lying in bed watching her. She mentioned that I looked tired. I told her I hadn't slept well, which wasn't a lie. She expressed concern, suggesting that maybe I should take a sick day and rest. The concern in her voice sounded genuine. That's what messed with my head the most. She seemed to really care about me, even while she was betraying me. How is that possible? After she left for work, I called in sick. I couldn't have focused on anything anyway. I spent the morning pacing around the apartment. I thought about calling my brother or my best friend, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Instead, I spent the day planning what I would say to her. I wrote down questions on a piece of paper, then threw it away. I rehearsed conversations in my head. I imagined her responses, her excuses, her tears. By the time she came home that evening, I decided I had to confront her. Victoria came home around 6:15 p.m. that day, about 15 minutes later than usual. She explained that she'd stopped at the grocery store to pick up ingredients for dinner. She wanted to make my favorite stir-fry. I watched her cook, chatting about her day, complaining about her boss, asking about my sick day. She seemed completely normal, happy even. She mentioned how glad she was that we decided to live together before the wedding, saying it felt so right, like we were already a married couple. I almost broke down right then. The casual cruelty of that statement was devastating. I told her we needed to talk. She looked at me, like she knew this moment was coming eventually. She asked what we needed to talk about, but her voice was different. I held up her phone and told her it was about Marcus. The color drained from her face. She sat down hard in the chair across from me, her legs apparently giving out. She started to say she could explain, but I interrupted her, asking if she really could. I then read her one of the messages out loud, the one where she told Marcus she'd lied to me about working late when really she was with the only man who knew how to make her come. She started crying immediately. She tried to say it wasn't what I thought it was, but I challenged her on that. I asked what I was supposed to think when I discovered she'd been cheating on me for months, meeting some guy at a motel. She begged me to let her explain, but I kept reading more messages. She whispered for me to stop, pleading with me to please stop reading. I asked her to stop what? Reading her own words, her own messages? I showed her one of the photos of them in bed together, her head on his chest, both of them smiling. I pointed out that according to the timestamp, it was taken the same day she told me she was too tired for sex because work was stressing her out. She couldn't speak. She was just sobbing and shaking her head. I asked her how long it had been going on. She was speechless, unable to look at me. I asked her why she would do this. If she wanted to be with him, why didn't she just break up with me? She said she didn't know, that she'd never meant for it to happen. I called bullshit on that. I pointed out that she didn't accidentally book a motel room, accidentally send him naked pictures, or accidentally tell him she loved him. She admitted quietly that she did love him. I asked her then why she was here, why we were planning a wedding, why she'd moved in with me if she loved him. She claimed she loved me too, saying she knew it sounded crazy, but she loved us both. I told her that's not how love works, that she didn't get to have both. She said she knew that, claiming she was going to end it with him and choose me. I asked when she was going to end it. She started crying harder. I reminded her that she sent him a photo of herself in her wedding dress, asking if he thought she looked beautiful. She kept apologizing, saying she'd never wanted to hurt me. I told her that she had hurt me every single day for months. Every time she came home from being with him and pretended everything was normal. She desperately offered to end it, promising she'd never see him again, that she'd block his number, even quit her job if necessary. She begged me not to leave her. I stared at her, this woman I'd planned to marry, to have children with, to grow old with. She was begging me not to leave her after months of betrayal. I asked if she had any idea what she'd done to me, if she understood that I'd never be able to trust her again, that every time she was 5 minutes late coming home, I'd wonder if she was with someone else, that every time she got a text message, I'd wonder who it was from. She insisted we could work through it, that couples survive affairs all the time, that we could go to counseling, and she'd do whatever it took. I told her this wasn't an affair. Affairs are mistakes, moments of weakness. This was a relationship. She'd had a whole other relationship while she was engaged to me. She didn't have an answer for that. I informed her that the wedding was off, that I'd be calling everyone tomorrow, and that she needed to find somewhere else to live. She pleaded with me not to do this, insisting she loved me and wanted to marry me. I told her no. She wanted to marry the idea of me, the security, the stability, the nice guy who'd take care of her. But she wanted to sleep with him. She couldn't have both. She cried for another hour. She begged, she promised, she swore it would never happen again. She claimed Marcus meant nothing to her, that it was just physical, that I was the one she really loved. But I'd read the messages. I'd seen the photos. I knew better. The next week was the worst week of my life. I had to make a dozen phone calls to cancel wedding vendors. I had to tell my parents, my brother, my friends. Victoria moved out the following Saturday. She'd been staying with her sister since our confrontation, but she came back to get her things. I wasn't there. I couldn't handle seeing her pack up the life we'd built together. She left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter with a note saying she was sorry, that she knew it didn't mean much now, but she was. She wrote that I deserved better. She was right. I did deserve better. The financial hit was significant. We lost deposits on the venue, the caterer, the photographer. The dress was non-returnable. I was out about $8,000, but honestly, that felt like a small price to pay to avoid marrying someone who could lie to my face for months. Friends and family rallied around me. My brother flew in from Denver to spend a weekend with me. My coworkers covered for me when I was having bad days. My mom called every night for 2 weeks just to check on me. The hardest part was the loneliness. I'd gotten used to having someone there when I came home from work. I'd gotten used to sharing meals, sharing a bed, sharing life with someone. Coming home to an empty apartment every night was brutal. I also had to deal with the practical stuff. We'd opened a joint savings account for wedding expenses that had to be closed. We'd bought furniture together that we had to divide up. But the emotional recovery was harder than the practical stuff. I found myself questioning everything about our relationship. Had any of it been real? When she said she loved me, did she mean it? When she seemed happy, was she just acting? When we had sex, was she thinking about him? I started second-guessing every interaction we'd had. Every time she'd been on her phone, every time she'd been tired, every time she'd suggested I work overtime. Was it all part of some plan to create opportunities for her to be with Marcus? I also struggled with self-doubt. What was wrong with me that she needed someone else? Why wasn't I enough? Was I boring? Bad in bed? Not exciting enough? It took months of therapy to realize that her cheating wasn't about me. It was about her. About her inability to be honest, her selfishness, her cowardice in not ending our relationship when she developed feelings for someone else. I heard through mutual friends that she and Marcus dated for a few months after she moved out, but it didn't last. Apparently, the excitement wore off once they didn't have to sneak around anymore. She tried to reach out to me a few times, texts, emails, even showing up at my workplace once, but I'd blocked her on everything and told security not to let her in. I wasn't interested in closure or friendship or forgiveness. I just wanted her out of my life completely. It's been 6 months now. I still have bad days. But overall, I'm grateful. Grateful that I found out before the wedding. Grateful that I didn't waste years of my life with someone who could deceive me so completely. Grateful that I learned what real betrayal feels like, because now I know what real trust should feel like too. Looking back, there were signs I missed. Victoria was good at covering her tracks, but subtle changes in her behavior that I explained away because I trusted her. The increased phone privacy was a big one. Her sex drive changed too. We went from being intimate 3 or 4 times a week to maybe once a week, always initiated by me. When we did have one, she seemed distracted, like she was going through the motions. I thought it was wedding stress or work pressure. But here's what I learned. Trust your gut. When something feels off, when patterns change, when your partner becomes secretive, pay attention. It doesn't mean you should become paranoid or controlling, but you should be aware. I also learned that some people are capable of compartmentalizing in ways that seem impossible. Victoria genuinely seemed to love me, even while she was betraying me. She could plan our wedding during the day and plan her affair in the afternoon. She could kiss me goodnight and mean it, even though she'd been with another man hours earlier. That kind of cognitive dissonance is hard to understand if you're not capable of it yourself. I couldn't imagine living that kind of double life, so I never suspected she was doing it. The biggest lesson, though, is about self-worth. For months after the breakup, I blamed myself. I thought if I'd been a better boyfriend, a more attentive partner, a more exciting lover, she wouldn't have cheated. But that's not how it works. People cheat because they choose to cheat. Not because their partner is inadequate, but because they lack the integrity to either work on their relationship or end it honestly. Victoria could have talked to me about whatever she was missing in our relationship. She could have suggested counseling. She could have broken up with me if she wasn't happy. Instead, she chose deception and betrayal. That choice says everything about her character and nothing about my worth as a partner. I'm also grateful that this happened when it did. If I'd found out after we were married, especially if we'd had kids, the damage would have been so much worse. Divorce is messier than a broken engagement. Child custody is more complicated than dividing up furniture. As much as it hurt to discover her affair when I did, the timing could have been much worse. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Victoria's behavior, if you're living a double life, if you're cheating on your partner while planning a future with them, please just stop. End the affair or end the relationship, but don't do what Victoria did. The person you're deceiving doesn't deserve it, no matter what problems you think exist in your relationship. They deserve honesty. They deserve the chance to work on the relationship or to find someone who will be faithful to them. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my situation, if something feels off in your relationship, if your partner's behavior has changed, if your gut is telling you something is wrong, trust yourself. You don't have to go through their phone or hire a private investigator, but you can have an honest conversation about your concerns. And if the worst happens, if you discover that your partner has been unfaithful, know that it's not your fault. It's not about what you did or didn't do. It's about their choices and their character. You will get through it. You will trust again. You will love again. It will hurt like hell for a while, but you will survive it. Thanks for watching, and remember, you deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not just when it's convenient for them.